We're in part 2 of our series, New Normal, which I'm excited to dive into, and really going to look at the story of Esther and her life. And here's why I believe her story is so applicable to our life, because she was, in many ways, was experiencing uncertain times, was facing uncertain events, and really didn't know what her future may look like, because in the beginning she was living as an exile. But what we see is that through her relationship with God, she was able to find certainty even in uncertain times. And here's what I know. In many ways for the future, we don't know what the future holds or what it will look like, what it's going to look like when you go back into the office, and what industries around us will look like, what community life may look like as restrictions lift and things begin to shift around us. And here's what I do know, though, and we're going to see this in the life of Esther, that even in the midst of uncertain times, we can find certainty through our relationship with God. You know, I mentioned that Esther was an exile. And she ended up, to give a context, I'm going to kind of summarize the book of Esther in short. And then we're going to draw some principles from her life. She was an exile in Persia. Now, she could have gone back to Jerusalem, but Jerusalem was war-torn. And honestly, what was happening in that time is that Jews were being mistreated. There was racism happening in that day. If you tuned in last week, we had made mention that very clearly racism is evil. In fact, in the coming months, if you missed it last week, I mentioned that we're going to be launching a series around race and how we can push back the darkness of racism in our community and in our culture. I'm very excited about that. And we see here that's what's experiencing, that the Jews are facing oppression. And then King Xerxes, the king of Persia, he becomes displeased with his wife, not the ideal man by any means, and he then looks for a new queen. So then Esther is captured. She's taken into servitude. She's captured to be one of a number of women to be chosen to be King Xerxes' future wife. Well, she's chosen. She becomes the queen. While she is queen, leaning to the ear of her uncle Mordecai, kind of a wise counsel in her life, and he tells her that you have been called to this, for such a time as this, to bring deliverance and freedom for the Jewish people. And Queen Esther, risking her life by going before the king, did that very thing and brought deliverance and freedom for the Jews. Now, here we see again a woman who was facing uncertainty, again an exile, and then captured and in servitude, and then became a queen, and then a deliverer for her people. We're going to draw some insights from her life on what we can apply to our own life, on how we can really, even in uncertain times, find certainty. You know, a scripture that's been key for us in this season is Isaiah 43:19, and it says this. This is the Lord speaking. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. We know around us that things in our community, in our culture, in our workplace, in our children's school, and even in your university, maybe your graduate program or your undergraduate program, or maybe you're in high school, there's uncertainty in the future. But here we see, and I want to encourage you, that our God is up to a new thing. That we're not just focusing on what's happening around us. We want to lean into what God is doing in us and what God is doing in the world, in the new thing. So with that said, let's draw some principles that we can glean from Esther and her story on how we can find certainty even in uncertain times. All right, here's point 1, and that's this, is that we need to pursue wise counsel. I want you to catch this, Esther 2:15. When the turn came for Esther to go to the king, so she had already been exiled, captured. Now she's in the kingdom. It says to go to the king. She asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. I think it's intriguing here that she leaned into the wisdom of Haggai. Somebody who'd been around the king, someone who had a history with the king, someone who knew the king's likes and dislikes. Come on, he knew his favorite food. Come on, somebody. He knew his favorite color. Come on, he knew if he was a Netflix or Hulu guy. Come on, just bring a little modern translation to it. He knew the king. And she leaned into his wisdom. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm capable, I'm intelligent, I can figure this out. No, she leaned in the counsel of somebody else. Yeah, I was reminded of when I walk with couples through a premarital process before they get married. One of the things I always encourage couples is find an older couple, somebody ahead of you, somebody who's been married longer than you, to be a mentor couple. Because here's what I know. Come on, married people, you know what I'm talking about. There's going to come a moment. Come on, and it can be a little thing. Like, come on, the toilet seat being left up. Come on, one of you rolls the toothpaste up, one of you leaves it flat. Come on, somebody. One of you uses a bag clip, the other one just rolls the bag up. Come on, there's gonna come moments, even small moments, where I know that couples will wonder, did I make the right decision? Are we gonna make it? And having a wise counsel in your life, having a couple who've been there, who've walked through those tension moments, who can encourage them and give them wise counsel. We all need wise counsel in our life. I once had a pastor tell me before that it's better to learn from someone else's mistakes than to learn from your own. Come on, somebody needs that right now. It's better to learn. Wisdom says this. Wisdom is learning from somebody else's mistakes, their mess ups, than learning from your own. But here's what I know. Pursuing wise counsel can be awkward. Here's what I realized, that we have a culture of independence. And a culture of independence, I want you to catch this, rages against the wisdom of interdependence. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. Come on. The culture of independence rages against the wisdom of interdependence. We live in a culture that elevates independence, and we think, I can figure it out. I'm smart enough. I'm good enough. I'm wise enough. I'm educated enough. I'm accomplished enough. But there's wisdom in leading into somebody else. And for some of you may feel this way, but the first time that I can remember that I asked someone to really be wise counsel in my life, it was a little awkward. I was in my late 20s. And I kind of set up coffee with this individual. We had been in a community group together. And the intention of the meeting was to ask him, can you be wise counsel in my life? Can you give me wisdom spiritually, wisdom in my marriage? I was kind of newly married, and he had been married longer, and he had been walking with God longer. And honestly, it was a little bit awkward for me. But can I tell you, I believe this, that relationship had saved me from making bad decisions. Come on, it saved me some headaches in life. It helped me to make the right decision in life. It helped me to stay centered in God's will. Why? Because I pursued wise counsel. And can I encourage you in this? Pursue wise counsel. Don't wait for it to come to you. Don't just wait and say, well, when's someone going to come mentor me? When's someone going to help me navigate life? No, you pursue it. Go to someone. Hey, and say, hey, listen, here's what I need in life. I need someone to help me in this area. I love what Proverbs says in Proverbs 11:14. Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in a multitude of counselors, there's safety. I was reminded some years ago, I was taking a ski class. I was learning to ski. And I was thinking to myself, I'd worked out and been working out, and come on, I played high school sports. Come on, basketball, baseball. Come on, leather jacket. Come on. Like that means anything. But anyways, I was thinking to myself, come on, I think I can get this. I think I can figure this out. And when I got into my ski class, it was kind of filled with a number of like children and people who were much older than me. So I was thinking to myself, like, hey, if these individuals can do this, I believe I can do it. I'm in good enough shape. And the pride in me inhibited me from hearing what the instructor was saying to me. So here's what your boy learned. That big men fall hard on the snow and the ice, and that I go down the hill fast. That's what I learned. What exactly what the scripture says. Where there's no counsel, people fall. I fell because I didn't lean into the voice of counsel. And it says a multitude of counselors. Let me give you, I think, perspective, a multitude of counselors. That when you think about your physical health, you go to a primary care physician for preventative work. You go to maybe an optometrist or ophthalmologist when it comes to your eyes. You go to a dermatologist for your skin. Come on, you go to a psychiatrist or psychologist for your mental health. Come on, in the same way, listen, that your wise counsel in marriage or relationships may not be the wise counsel you need for your finances. So I have several different individuals in my life who give me counsel in different areas, finances and my marriage and parenting and spiritual counsel. And you need people of God who can give you counsel to help you navigate the different seasons of life. But then not only to receive the counsel, but come on, do what the counsel tells you to do. Esther 2:20, that Esther had kept a secret, kept secret her family's background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do. Mordecai was her uncle. She continued to follow Mordecai's instructions as she had done when he was bringing her up. I want you to find this. Esther not only leaned into wise counsel, she did what the counsel told her to do. Come on, it's like, we've all been there, maybe going to a personal trainer or a nutritionist. Come on, you heard what they told you to do. They said you need to eat, come on, some kale, but you said, did you say potato chips or kale? I don't know. I'm going to choose. Come on. You've heard what you're supposed to do before. Come on. But you didn't do it. We've all been there in different areas of our life where maybe we heard something and we knew that was wise, but we still didn't do it because doing it is much harder than just listening to it. In fact, some years ago, I remember I met with somebody who was asking for some biblical guidance on some personal issues, some relationship issues. And several weeks afterwards, he asked to meet again. And I said, well, that's conditional upon your answer to this one question. Did you do what I asked you to do before? The guidance that you came to me before, did you put that into practice? Because if the answer is no, you're just wanting to hear wise counsel, not actually put it into practice. And that's not going to help you. That's not going to help me. We need to actually put it into practice. I was even challenged with this last week. I spoke with a wise counsel in my own life. And I went into the conversation already with some thoughts in mind, like here's what I'm thinking I should do. And I was pretty confident in that. And when I presented it to my wise counsel, he actually told me something different. And after the conversation, I had a decision to make. Am I gonna remain prideful? I'm just being honest and do what I think is best to do. Am I gonna lean into the wisdom of wise counsel? Can I tell you, pursue wise counsel. Do what they tell you to do. Here's point number 2, is to win the war in the spiritual. Esther 4. Before I dive into this, what essentially happens is Mordecai, before this, he goes to Esther and says, this is the time for you to go to the king on behalf of the Jewish people and ask for their deliverance. But before she goes into action, before she goes to the king, before she begins making all of these plans and executing, she does this. Esther 4:15 says this, that Esther sent a reply to Mordecai, go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I'll go to the king, even though it's against the law. And if I perish, I perish. I love this because Esther, before she took any action, she sought God. And here's why I worded win the war in the spiritual, because if you don't even realize it, there is actually, your battle isn't against flesh and blood. In fact, the Apostle Paul said this in Ephesians 6. We're not fighting against flesh and blood enemies. She knew her battle wasn't against King Xerxes. Her battle were not against the oppressors of the Jewish people, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in the dark world, against evil spirits in heavenly places. Our battle isn't against flesh and blood. Therefore, we don't battle in natural ways. We war in the spirit. So she has a time of fasting and prayer. I want to make note of 2 things. She has a time of fasting and prayer for 3 days. It was common in a religious practice to fast for 1 day. So the fact that she fasted for 3 days let them know she was serious. She was leaning into God, like for real. But then she asked the Jews in Susa to do the same thing. She didn't do it by herself. Come on, you were not created to do life alone. You need people praying with you, fasting with you, to encourage you as you walk out your purpose. I think it's intriguing too, because I think we live in a culture that's kind of act first, pray later. Right? Come on, anybody been there? You kind of have an idea, you have a plan. Come on, you put it into action. What am I the only one? Okay, maybe just me. Maybe you. We act first, and then maybe we make some bad decisions, or we find ourselves in maybe a difficult situation, and then we pray, right? Like, God help me, deliver me, come through for me. And I love that Esther kind of flips it and says, pray first, and then act accordingly. I have this wristband that I wear on my wrist. You may have noticed it before. And it says pray first. And here's why. I naturally am a person of action. I'm naturally, if I have an idea, I want to move on it. And this reminds me, listen, that we're not acting first and praying later. We're praying first and we're acting according to what God is doing and leading us to do. Listen, a vision from God will require dependence upon God. I love Edwin Lewis Cole said this, that prayer in private results in boldness in public. I love that. Remember when I first got married to Christina, to be honest, as her husband and as biblically her spiritual leader now, and just to give context, leader meaning this, leader in the eyes of Jesus is servant. So as the a servant to serve her spiritually, I was a little overwhelmed. Because here's why. When we were dating, I'll never forget going to her house to help her to get ready to move. And I saw boxes of journals. I asked her, what are those? She was like, these are journals that I've been writing letters and prayers to God, to Jesus. I'm thinking to myself, like, she's been writing all of these like books to Jesus for years. And I was just kind of fresh, kind of newer back to faith. And I remember thinking to myself, kind of being like, wow, this woman is incredible. Come on. And I remember we got married, I was thinking to myself, like, how am I going to lead her spiritually? So I remember one day coming home from work and going to my bedroom and our bedroom and getting in my face and just saying, God, I don't know how to lead her. I need you to help me lead her spiritually. And I'll never forget what I felt the Spirit of God just speak to me in my heart so strongly and lovingly. And it was this, Jeremy, what I've called you to, I've equipped you for. And can I encourage you? Some of you need to hear this. What he's called you to, he's equipped you for. Hey parent, hey mom, hey dad, you feel overwhelmed? What he's called you to, he's equipped you for. Come on, business owner, you're feeling overwhelmed right now. Maybe lots of uncertainties. What he's called you to, he's equipped you for. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you're a graduate student and there's uncertainty. Hey, what he's calling you to, he's equipped you for. And can I tell you, it gave me the confidence to be the man that God was calling me to be. Listen, we need to pray first, seek God first, and we need to stay in the Word of God. I love Joshua 1:8. Here's Joshua. He is succeeding Moses. Moses, a respected leader, an admired leader, a well-known leader. And here he is stepping in now to lead what used to be individuals he served alongside. And mind you, he is a leader in government. He is leading them on military efforts on different times. So he's not a church leader. He's leading in the marketplace. He's leading in government. And God has a conversation with him and he says this, keep this book of law always on your lips, saying to Joshua, meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you'll be prosperous and very successful. I want you to catch this. Again, a military government leader, and God tells Joshua, I want you to be in my word. Then you'll be prosperous. Do what it says and I'll be prosperous. That word prosperous means God pushing you forward. Can I encourage somebody today? You remain in the word of God and God will push you forward in ways that you can never get to that place yourself on your best day, in your best efforts, with the best degree and the best connections. Why? Because he can push you forward in ways you never could. I love this quote by D.L. Moody, a theologian. He wrote this, that when we find a man meditating on the words of God, my friends, that is a man full of boldness and is successful. Can I tell you this? Listen, I want you to hear this. Success in God, his purposes, in your next season is dependent upon your time in his word in this season. I'm not saying this in a religious way, in a works-based way. I'm saying it in a posture of your heart, saying, I'm going to pursue you, God. I'm going to look to your word more than anything else for direction, for insight, for clarity, to guide my life. Remember years ago, before Christina and I, we moved to the Washington, D.C. area, we were feeling that God was calling us up here to help a local church, to serve a local church. And be a part of the vision that what God was doing there. And we were trying to discern direction and figure out is God calling us to move there or stay where we are? And one morning while I was opening up my word, as I was spending time in the word every morning, I would encourage you to do so. I call it a daily meetup with God. Have a daily meetup with God. Open up his word. And I'll never forget reading Genesis chapter 12. In the moment where God tells Abraham, I want you, at the time he was called Abram, I want you to go to the land and I will show you. In other words, I want you to take a step and I'll show you the rest later. And in that moment, I felt the Spirit of God just quicken my own spirit and speak to my heart. Jeremy, I want you and Christina to go to the Washington, D.C. area, and then I'll show you what I want to do later. So we moved up here. At that moment, I did not know that some years later, he would then put in our heart to start with a group of amazing people, what is known as Catalyst Church. But we just said yes. And listen, there's many times that I've missed it, but I believe by remaining in God's word that I heard him, I received it in that moment, and I'm believing that for you. And here's the encouraging part, is that God is with you. Joshua 1:9, he says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Here's the beautiful thing. God's not like, hey, here's the direction. Now go forth and conquer. No, God's like, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to comfort you. I'm going to counsel you. Listen, God is not some dictatorial leader, some authority figure who's saying, now here's your command. Here's your direction. Now go do. No, he said, I'm a loving Father, son, daughter. I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to be with you. I love you. I'm for you. I will comfort you. I will counsel you. I'll be with you wherever you go. He'll be with you in this next season. Come on, parent, he's going to be with you in this new season. Maybe you're expecting your first child. He's going to be with you in this season. Maybe you're preparing to be married. He'll be with you in this next season. And that business God's calling you to launch, he'll be with you in that season. And that book he's calling you to write, he'll be with you in that season. In your career as you pivot in this new season, he will be with you wherever you go. I love Jeremiah 33. The Lord says this, call to me and I will answer you. I will tell you the great and unsearchable things you do not know. I love that. Can I encourage you with this? Listen, do not attempt to accomplish a vision from heaven with solely wisdom from earth. Again, I'm going to say it for the people in the back. Do not attempt to accomplish a vision from heaven that God's given you. He's spoken to you. He's put in your heart with merely wisdom from this earth. I'm not saying don't lean into the wisdom of this earth. I'm saying lean into the wisdom from God. Ask him. Seek him. Seek his ways. Seek him to help you parent. Seek him to help you in your work. Seek him to help you as you finish graduate school. Seek his wisdom. Here's point number 3. Let's take bold and courageous steps of faith. Esther chapter 5, what happens is Esther comes before the king. Now, mind you, that those who came before the king without being summoned were sentenced to death. She was risking her life on behalf of her people. She comes before the king and he says this, what is it, Queen Esther? What's your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given to you. She says, for I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept it quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king. The king Xerxes asked Queen Esther, who is he? Where is he, the man who has dared to do such a thing? She then says, an adversary, an enemy, this vile Haman. Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. Again, here she is risking her life before the king on behalf of her people, on behalf to fulfill her purpose. Just a side note, listen, a purpose from God is worth risking something for. Then chapter 7, verse 1 says this, or verse 2, the king asked, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What's your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. The queen then answered, if I found favor with you, your majesty, if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. Spare my people. This is my request. Here we see in this moment that Queen Esther, and I believe this is in her heart, I believe this was the very thing that she knew was her purpose. She understood this, that her purpose was not the position of queen, but the position actually was a vehicle so that she could fulfill her purpose, which was to deliver people. Can I help you out? The purpose is not in something. It's in someone. The purpose isn't a position. It's not the business. It's not the book. It's not the role. It's actually the people's lives that will be impacted by your book, by your business. The people are the purpose, the position. Whatever the thing that you do, it's just a vehicle. And Esther saw that in that moment. Reminded me years ago, I heard John Maxwell business, leadership author, speaker, coach. And he was sharing when God called him from pastoring into business world. And how even though he was speaking and coaching and writing books, he knew his purpose, that those things were all vehicles to add value to and to serve people and to ultimately share the hope of Jesus with people. Listen, your purpose is not found in a position. It is found in people. The position is a vehicle. And here's one of the things I found the enemy will do. He wants to convince you your purpose is in a position or that your purpose is about you because he knows it'll leave you unfulfilled and it'll eventually be a self-destructive cycle. But when you understand, when there's people, that's the purpose. One of the other things the enemy wants to do is he wants the stress that's tied to the position to blind you from your true purpose, which is the people. Come on, business owner. He wants the stress of the bills that are coming in, of the overhead, of maybe some issues with some of the projects you're working on. He wants that stress to block you from the purpose, which is serving your team, your staff, and serving your clients. Come on, parents. He wants the stress of all the tasks that you have to do to keep the household going and feeding your children and caring for your children. And he wants all of those things to actually prevent you from seeing the purpose, which is to serve and to love your children. Have you allowed a time to be stressed to block you from seeing the true purpose of where God's called you, of what he's called you, that position? That thing you're doing is a vehicle to serve people. I want to close with this. I think what we see in the life of Esther, I believe what enabled her to take the bold steps of faith, what it would empower her to fulfill her purpose, was that she trusted in God. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And all of your ways submit to him. That word, all of your ways submit to him, means to seek his guidance. Meaning all of your ways. Not just when things are rough, when the money's low, when you feel like you don't know what you're doing. No, seek him when the money's great. Seek him when you feel like you have a good handle on things. Seek him when you feel like you're doing well. Seek him in all seasons, and he will make your path straight. We see this in Esther, that she leaned into wise counsel. She sought God through counsel. God will speak through wise counsel. She sought him by prayer and fasting before she went before the king. She kept trusting God, seeking God, and God made her path straight. Where we see Esther to go from being an exile to now being a deliverer. Only God could do that. I resonate with this story because I've seen God do it in my own life. I mentioned before the word that God gave us and prompting us to move to the Washington, D.C. area. But I can tell you this, and listen, not every moment, just like Esther, not every moment, there was resistance from Haman. There was probably internal resistance she was overcoming. There'll be resistance. Why? Because our battle isn't against flesh and blood, but there is actually an enemy, Satan, who he wants to come against you. He wants to come against God's purpose in your life. So when we trusted God to move to the Washington, D.C. area, if I could be honest, there were moments where we questioned it. There were moments where we wrestled with it because things didn't happen. It wasn't like this like beautiful, perfect story where everything worked out perfectly. There were moments of stress. There were tears. There were moments of prayers like, God, if you don't show up, I don't know what's going to happen. Things didn't happen in our timeline. Things didn't come in the package we always expected it to. I remember the timeline of us getting a job before we moved up here was much later than we wanted to. Us finding a place to live much later than we wanted to. Things that even happened in those initial first years didn't always work out how we thought they would. But then I remember that word God gave us. And we kept trusting him. God, we're going to trust your word. We didn't always get it right. But we kept trusting in God. And then we saw when years later, God gave us the word to start what is known as Catalyst Church. A church that would make a difference in the Washington, D.C. area and beyond, which we're seeing right now. And we trusted him in his word, even in the pre-launch process. And we had a myriad of things that we were doing to prepare for the church to launch and not knowing, lots of uncertainty. We found certainty in him. That was where we rested our faith. That's where we put our trust. And can I tell you, church, we're not even a year and a half old as a church, and we've seen over 500 people who've made a decision to follow Jesus, whose lives have been forever changed. Why? Not because anything about us, but it is about God. And here's what I know. God will do exceedingly and abundantly and above more than you could ever ask, think, or imagine if you will trust him. It won't always be easy. It won't always come in the package you expected. But if you trust in his word, you trust in his ways, you seek him, he will do more than you can imagine. And can I tell you, this word is not just for people like myself who are a pastor. God has called you. God has commissioned you. He's asking you to trust him as a government employee, as a doctor, as a nurse, as an engineer, as a teacher, as a parent, because those are also calls from God. And as you trust in him, you'll see him make your path straight. You'll see him like Esther, where you can look back and say, this was truly the hand of God and the work of God. How do we find certainty, church, in the midst of uncertain times? We trust God. We trust God. It won't always look like what you expect. It won't always feel like what you want it to feel like. But can I tell you, he will do more. He will exceed your expectation. He will blow your imagination because it's who he is. I want you to pray with me. I want to pray with two groups of people. Listen, if you're here, you're listening right now, and you just feel a stirring in your spirit, and maybe you've identified even ways that, I need to lean more into prayer, into his word. I need to trust him in greater ways. I need to take some steps of faith. I need to pursue some wise counsel. If God has been speaking to you, stirring you in this message, I want to pray for you right where you are. And I know this is via technology. I know it's via live stream, but I know the Spirit of God is alive and he is right where you are. And I believe he will speak to you. I believe he will move right now in your life.